I'm Joanna Garzilli. You're watching Life Stories. Today, my guest is Darren Prince, author of Aiming High and celebrity and sports agent. Darren, welcome to Life Stories.
Thanks for having me.
So, I came across you online because of your book, and I felt compelled to have you here as a guest and for people to learn more about you, your journey. So if you could start with where you grew up and your first life memories.
Sure, I grew up in Livingston, New Jersey, a great loving family, one sister, and mom and dad gave me all the love and the care in the world. Had a lot of friends, did a lot of sports, a lot of activities. I had this obsession with baseball cards growing up, and once my friends got to be 10, 11, 12, 13 years old and wanted a date, I really became infatuated with baseball cards. I would study the statistics on them. I wasn't a great student. Math was probably my best subject. And I sort of became this statistical genius studying the back of these trading cards that eventually evolved into a very lucrative business when I was 14 years old. And I always felt like I had something to prove because my lack of intellect in school, I was teased quite often. I was in special education classrooms. I always had a feeling of less than. I never felt a part of. Even though from the outside I had all the friends, I never felt like I belonged. And at 14 years old is when I started this baseball card business that just absolutely blew up and became a multimillion-dollar company by the time I was 16 years old.
So what was that primary feeling that you had as a child when you were going through being teased?
I remember walking through hallways at certain points in my grammar school years, and somebody would say, "Oh, there goes one of the idiots." And I would look left, and I'd look right, and I'd look all the way around, and I was the only one in the hallway. And, you don't think at the time it does anything to you. You kind of like shove it down in here. And I come back home to my mom and dad thinking nothing of it. The reason I wrote Aiming High was there was a secret. Even with all that success at a young age, at 12 years old in sleepaway camp, I had horrible stomach pains one night. And I asked the counselor to take me to the infirmary. And this nurse gave me in a clear cough syrup cup this green liquid, and it tasted absolutely horrible. I remember I almost vomited, but as I'm walking across the softball field, 2 minutes later, this feeling, this love affair, this warmth came over me. I felt like Superman. For the first time in my life, I felt a part of. I felt just as smart as everybody. I felt right up here with the rest of the world. And I had the courage to flirt with the girls at the bunk next to me. And then I was the funny comical guy with the guys in my bunk, and people were laughing with me, not at me. They were no longer making fun of me. And thinking nothing of it, I went to bed. I woke up the next morning, did all my activities that a 12-year-old would do. And lying in bed that very next night, no stomach pains whatsoever. I'm thinking how amazing that feeling was. And I said to the counselor, I need to go back. My stomach's killing me. This went on for 3 straight weeks. And the nurse kept giving me whatever that was until I found out when my mom and dad came up for visitation that I was taking liquid Demerol, which is a hardcore opiate. And I knew right then and there that I needed whatever that was. I didn't know that I was an addict. Some people could immediately get that feeling, but I just knew whatever that was, I needed to feel that way 24/7, 365 days a year.
So that was 12 years old. Mm-hmm. And then 14, you started doing the baseball cards. So what happened in between 12 and 14? What was the progression, that negative progression there? And at the same time, what were the things that were positive that were happening in parallel?
So the positive was, in my life was, my father saw something was happening with the business. And although he knew I wasn't the best student, he saw that in my own way, I was brilliant when it came to something. And he chose to push me in that direction. He was my business mentor. He was in the direct mail coupon advertising business. And I was like a sponge. Everything he would teach me about displays and merchandising. And when I came downstairs at 14 years old one day, as I talk about in my book, and I said, "Dad, I need insurance on my baseball cards." I thought I was crazy because I didn't need insurance. And I said, "Yeah, I need about 8 or 9. So he's like, "Okay, I'll call the homeowner's insurance company tomorrow. Just in case they ever get stolen or we have a flood, and I'll get you $1,000 worth of insurance." And I remember pulling on his shirt. I go, "Dad, 8 or 9,000 I need." And now he really thinks I'm crazy. So he goes, how do you have $8,000 or $9,000 worth of baseball cards? And I said, well, my friends were taking the popular players. I wanted the older players that like you grew up on and my grandfather and my uncles grew up on, because they're the ones that are worth the most money. So I would trade everybody. And he challenged me at that point and said, well, how can you sell them? And I had a newspaper ad for a table at a convention in 2 weeks. So for $20, I got to display on a 6-foot table. And it became the biggest moment of my life. I put every ounce of energy after school into making sure I had the most meticulous display anybody has ever seen at a baseball card convention, from the holders to the prices to the lighting to the display cases. And you would have thought I did it my whole life, and I woke up at 5 o'clock that morning of the baseball card show as if it was the biggest moment of my life. In many ways it was. And I made over $1,000 as a 14-year-old that Sunday afternoon. And my mother and my father, the light bulb went on in their head, which back in 1984 was a tremendous amount of money.
What was happening underneath?
So I talk about that too. When I got home that night, as exhilarating as this was, and I loved being in the middle of the dealing, the wheeling, the buying, the selling, the trading, I felt like a natural. But when I got back home that night with a pile of cash and all these cards that I traded for and accumulated, I remember being alone in my own head and feeling like the kid in the small classrooms again. I felt like without that action, without being in the middle of this environment, that I went back to feeling like the kid that didn't belong, the one that never fit in.
So you started your business, 14 years old. Mm-hmm. What happened next?
I'm going to go back into my next drug experience. At 15, I went to a dentist appointment to get a wisdom tooth removed. And 1 in 3 kids, at least I know in America, that go to a dentist appointment to get opiates become addicts. I was one of the 3. Thinking nothing of it, he gave my mom a prescription of pills. I go home, I took them. That love affair came back again. Now it was dangerous because I had access to money as a 15-year-old. And calling up all my friends, calling up girls I never had the courage to call. I remember being on the phone for hours. I had all these amazing ideas, at least I thought I did. And within 2 days, the pills were gone. I was devastated. I went downstairs to my mom and put on the crocodile tears. I said, we have to go back to the dentist. I said, Mom, my tooth is killing me. There was no pain. As a loving mother who wants to see their children suffer. So she took me back. I put the crocodile tears on again. I said to the dentist, I can't. I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I have an infection. He gave another prescription. For 2 more days, I was high as a kite. And now my business was booming. I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, 15, 16, 17 years old. And I partied like a rock star. Drugs, alcohol, you name it, I did it. And 21 years old is when I finally had my first series of repercussions. I was arrested 4 times in 6 months.
What happened?
I was at a rock concert one time. Another time I was in a car accident. There was a marijuana pipe in the glove box, prescription pills. Never thought I had a problem. It was just bad luck. It was bad timing, being there with my friends at the wrong place, and they were the reasons I got caught. It was just a horrible streak of bad luck. So the judge took my license away for a year, put me in a outpatient treatment center called the Alliance in Livingston, New Jersey. And after almost completing, I called my friend Dave up one night. I said, I got this brilliant idea, man, let's go celebrate. I'm almost done with this stupid program. And we did these mind erasure shots in New York City. I don't know if you have them in London, but here
what are they?
We have these anxiety pills called Xanax.
Yes.
I took a handful of them. I literally blacked out. My mind was erased. And Dave fell asleep behind the wheel, and my face went right into the windshield. I had 90 stitches, tooth was missing, broken nose, stitches everywhere. I still have some scars from it. And I woke up in the ICU, and who do I see? My mom and dad, just staring right at me with tears. After basically completing this program, going for 4 arrests, that's what we do as addicts and alcoholics and substance abusers. We destroy everybody else around us. It's got nothing to do with me anymore. It's everybody else that we take down. And to know that no matter what they did, there was nothing they could do to stop me. That was even more heartbreaking. Because even then, with 90 stitches and all busted up, I just didn't really think it was a problem. I looked at the outside success and didn't realize that I really needed an inside solution for what was going on in my life.
And that wasn't enough of a bottom for you?
No, it wasn't. My career actually exploded even higher. I took it to a whole nother level.
Why do you feel that is?
I just, when I talk about like those moments of feeling less than and not good enough and being teased, and they stay into your spiritual core. the reason why recovery is so beautiful is it allows you to be in touch with those moments and clear out your subconscious. It goes somewhere. Everybody has something either traumatic, something that just changes their course of their thought process, their esteem, their self-confidence at a young age. If you don't address it, it gets stuck in there. And that's what happened. So to me, I was so busy looking at the cars and the woman and the money and the places I was able to go and all the big sporting events and concert and being able to take my friends, 10, 15 of them on vacation, that I couldn't have a problem. How could I have a problem? How could I have accomplished all this? And then I always had to prove something to the world because I always felt like that idiot, that dumb kid in the back of the room. I always felt like I had to keep proving myself again and again and reinventing at a different level of success each time.
So at what point did you become aware that you didn't need to prove yourself?
That probably happened when I found recovery. I had my first overdose. Once I started Prince Marketing Group and I was representing some of the biggest athletes and actors in the world for a good 7 years, and I must have, I lived life like a rock star and there was still no repercussions. But at one point, as I say when I do a lot of speaking, what was once living to use turned out to using to live. And I don't know when that happened, but I had an overdose in Las Vegas. I was with Dennis Rodman at NBA All-Star Game weekend. We were celebrating a TV show deal that I negotiated with Mark Cuban for Dennis's own show. And I had a horrible case of bronchitis. And I called the doctor who gave me this prescription, opiate-based cough syrup, painkillers, to my antibiotic. I went to get it, came back, called up the hotel, and I said, can you please send 3 vodka cranberry Red Bulls to the room? Wasn't much of a drinker, but I wanted to be woken up. And I took the cough syrup, I took the pills, I took the drinks. Within 2 minutes, I'm on the ground, shaking, in and out of blackouts, foaming at the mouth. My heart's palpitating, hot flashes, cold flashes. My then wife, who I was married at the time, obviously freaked out, called 911. They knocked down the door, put a needle in my arm, oxygen mask on my face. I'm in and out of consciousness, praying to God, don't take me, I don't know what the hell I did. I have no idea what the hell happened here. Please, I'll never do it again. 4 hours later, I wake up. I never made it out that night. And I go into the bathroom to look at myself. My eyes are bloodshot. I got bags everywhere. I look like I was probably 60 years old. And I said to myself, you sick bastard, who does this? Who has all this? And then mixes vodka, cranberry, and Red Bull. And with that, I took some more cough syrup and a handful of pills, and I went back into the bed. So they talk about the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That next week, I went to an addiction psychiatrist. That was part of my first moment of awakening. He put me on an opiate blocker. I was on antidepressants, anxiety pills, sleeping pills, drinking several days a week to the point of blackout. And I had my God moment on July 2nd, 2008, where my uncle and his then girlfriend were in the 12-step fellowships. I never met her before. 2 days earlier, they were in town from Florida. She came to my condo and she said, you don't look good. Not even knowing her, everything came out. I told her the truth. And she goes, do you realize you're an addict? Your life's unmanageable. I said, absolutely. She goes, do you realize you're powerless and that you need help? I said, 100%. She goes, are you willing to do anything I tell you to do? I said, absolutely. And she put me on this detox plan. I probably should have gone to rehab. I don't suggest it the way that I did it. But
how did you do it?
She worked with treatment centers, so she sort of knew her limitations on what she could do and couldn't do with me. And it was during the course of 4 or 5 days. And on that 5th day, was July 2nd, 2008, I was living in New York City. This is getting to your question, even though I just gave you a long answer. And I just started tripping out. I was like, I can't do this anymore. The detox pains, the withdrawals. I called her up. I said, I can't do this. My brain is opiate deficient. I've been on these things for 23 years. There's no way I'm calling the doctor right now. So her and my uncle are yelling, this is the goddamn disease talking. You need to get yourself to a 12-step meeting, put your hand up, tell these people you're sick and you're suffering and you need help. I said, no friggin' way. I hung up the phone and went into the bathroom to take these non-narcotic anxiety pills, and 4 Vicodins fell out, which were one of the 3 opiates I was addicted to. At the moment, it seemed like a gift from God. And then something clicked in my brain that told me it was a curse from the devil, and I fell on my knees for the first time in my life. Shaking, trembling, and crying to God to take these chains off, that I can't do it anymore. I said, take it all away. The notoriety, the business, the money, I don't care. Give me one day of freedom, whatever it takes. And I felt this warmth on my right shoulder that I'll never forget. I heard a voice saying, I got you, and you're ready. So as I'm looking down, I remember standing up, taking my hand, flushing the pillows. I wound up in the living room 30 seconds later, found a 12-step meeting on the cab ride over, thinking to myself, oh my God, for the first time in my life, Darren Prince wanted to stay sober more than he wanted to stay high. And by the grace of God, that date's my sobriety date. July 2nd, 2008, I walked into a church basement with 150 plus addicts and alcoholics who were once of a hopeless state of mind. It wasn't Magic Johnson or Hulk Hogan or Dennis Rodman or Muhammad Ali or Joe Frazier or Pamela Anderson, any of these people that I've worked with. It was these 150 plus people made me feel worth something. They showed me the softer, easier way to recovery. They showed me love. They showed me faith. They all loved me before I finally knew how to love myself one day at a time. And I just dove in with every fiber of my body. And one day at a time, I started to realize I don't need that. That's the old me. This is a fellowship where I can push the reset button on my life. I could look at the past, not regret it, but not stare at it too long. And as days became weeks and weeks became months and months became years, I realized the biggest gift is giving it away. And that's where it brought us to Aiming High, which is why I'm here. And I said, it's got to be a platform. My dad passed away a year and a half ago, and he always wanted me to write a book. And right after he passed, all these God-given blessings really started to happen. I was honored by New Jersey's largest rehab center in front of 800 people. Dr. Oz put me on his show with Darryl Strawberry. I got contacted by the Trump administration to help with this opiate epidemic. And then my publisher, Anna David, and I met for the first time in December of last year. And she's like, you need to write a book. We need to combine people being a fly on the wall of this industry that everyone's so fascinated about with the hell of your addiction. And like I realize every single day now, I have such a God-given gift each day to wake up and to know that I don't need that life anymore. I live by these spiritual principles that no matter what happens in my life, I don't pick up a drink, a drug, a substance, an opiate, whatever it might be. I don't need it. Nothing that affects me from the neck up. I'm a member of the No Matter What Club. And I need to just give this gift away as often as possible to people that need it.
Can you share a little bit about the process of going through writing the book? Because in my experience, writing a book is sort of like giving birth to a child.
Absolutely. It was for sure. You know firsthand. You know, it took about a year. It wasn't horrible. I think the audiobooks was more brutal because that took about 9 or 10 hours. But it was very therapeutic. There was a lot of tears, a lot of happy tears. You know, when you think back chronologically and you look back and be like, wow, I did that, or that was once me. But I just kept telling myself, even those emotional periods, that you're going to change and save lives with this book. You know, and even though for such a large period of my life and during my sobriety, I knew I needed God, at one point I started hearing him tell me, I need you, which is the best part about this book.
So speaking of that, this next 10, 20 years in your career path and global impact, what do you vision, and who are 5 people that are the wind beneath your wings for implementing that?
5 people for helping to implement that? Well, you know, because of what I do as an agent, it does give me the ability to get out there a lot quicker than your typical recovery advocate. But, you know, Magic Johnson and Hulk Hogan are right at the top of the list, and Dennis Rodman, they've always supported me. Mark Cuban gave me an amazing testimonial. And then there's some recovery advocates that are game changers, like Chris Herron in America. There's not much bigger. He's my spiritual brother, Ryan Hampton, Tim Ryan. These guys get it. They understand that we've all been touched. And we've got this ability now to walk into a room, grab a microphone, and it's not us speaking. In that moment, God is working through every single one of us. Because there's not a person coming into the studio today, tomorrow, and all of next week that doesn't know somebody suffering from the disease of addiction right now, and especially this opiate epidemic. I feel now it's actually my responsibility. When I asked Magic to write the foreword of the book, we cried happy tears together. And he's like, this would be a tough situation if you didn't write the book. Because this is your calling. I found my purpose through my pain. And that's the most amazing thing in the world.
knowing that there are so many people suffering in the world, many of them in secret, with addiction issues that span even beyond the opioid addiction, how would you say is the best way? What do you feel is the best way to reach as many people as possible?
Yeah, I'm just living proof that no matter how much you have or don't have, that you can be from Yale or jail or Park Avenue to Park Bench. Disease does not discriminate. It will take you down, your family down, whether you have money or you don't have money. It doesn't care. Nobody's off the table to it. You know, I always make myself accessible on Facebook and Instagram. You guys can post it. It's @agent_DP. I'm always available, as you know, to answer any. People can go to the official book website, aiminghighbook.com, and I get access to all the emails. My IT people forwarded to me. I'm a rep for Banyan Treatment Centers, which is the largest privately owned rehab centers in America. They have 11 different properties in 4 different states. Because it's one thing for somebody to want that breakthrough or hit that bottom, but then what do you do? So I have the ability to actually direct them to the right place to get the treatment that they need. And like I said, start in life.
My last question to you is, for someone who says, you don't understand, Darren, my situation's different. I've gone through this, this, and this, right? The typical voice of the addict. What would you say to that person who is suffering, who feels they're in that place where they can't get back to get to a place of ever having a spiritual awakening?
You can get there. You know, I'm living proof, and I've heard some of the worst stories in the world from mothers, fathers losing their children, and they're the happiest people you've ever seen right now in recovery. Because recovery changes our perspective and our perception on everything in life. And it literally makes us completely different people. And the strength is in surrendering. The courage is in surrendering and trying something different. The weakness is staying into that place and keep telling yourself otherwise. But the spirituality for me is now I like to say what I mean what I say, and not say and mean. I like to understand people instead of being understood. In the heat of maybe a possible argument, I'd rather feel all right than right, even if I know I'm 100% right, because I want more of this spiritual intoxication. I want to make sure that I'm living life to the fullest. And toxic people, you know, there's certain ones that you have to love from a distance if they're family members. But as Joel Osteen says, that's what I do. I love them from a distance. You know, it's really just a matter of surrendering. Even if you're 50% of the surrendering, it's enough, because that gives you the willingness to say, okay, I'm ready to try something different.
Thank you, Darren. I'm Joanna Garzilli. You're watching Life Stories. Today, my guest was author of Aiming High, Darren Prince. Tune in next time.